Hello there. Since my last recording, I played 2 rounds in the LoneWolf Open tournament, but I was really busy with my other obligations and my job, so I didn't have time to record it. So I will now record the analysis from the game from the round 5, and then I will record hopefully very soon for the round 6 as well. So in the round 5 I was black. I played against stronger opponent. You can see by the rating that he's stronger, and also in the other rating categories he's stronger than me. Not much, but consistently stronger. And well, my opponent is a retired music teacher, so I guess he's also kind of adult improver, and from his academic background I can say that he's probably very diligent in his chess studies. So I expect a tough opponent who knows his theory, who knows how to play chess, who knows his principles. So this was the game, and well, let's go right into it. It was a very long game, 2.5 hours, 110 moves, so it was very exhausting. I will try to go a little bit quickly through some phases of the game, so not to bore you and to focus on important stuff. If the video should nevertheless last a little bit more, you will forgive me, and I think it will make worth it to watch it to the end. Okay, so my opponent opened with knight f3, so he went for Reti. I mean, from the first move, it's not clear that it is Reti, but it will become here later. So what to do against unsound openings? But I don't mean unsound, Reti sound, but unorthodox openings. So openings which are not e4 and d4. I spoke about this several times already. Because I'm not a fan of learning many lines and opening theory. I think you should know your main lines and you should stick to principles. So if you face some kind of opening which you don't know theory, like the Reti, I don't know the theory of Reti, how to play against Reti as black. So just stick to some system, to some setup which you know, and stick to the principles. So you saw this in my games over and over again. My opponents played something like G3, they play Reti, they play English. So I don't know any theory about all this, but then I decide, okay, he plays Reti, I will just play my Queen Goblet declined setup, for example. Or in the game before, I played my Slav setup, something like this. Okay, so you just play your some kind of setup in which you are familiar with. You know how to where to put your pieces, how the pawn structure should look like, and so on. So you don't just play blindly the setup, but you follow the basic chess principles. So this is how I played. So d4, c4, e6. Now I mean, it's a logical move. I'm just supporting the pawn in the center, and this is also Queen Goblet decline the pawn structure, which I'm familiar with, so everything is okay. G3, knight f6, b3. This is the typical Reti setup. Bishop to e7, so just developing. Bishop g2, castles. So nothing spectacular here. Bishop to b2, as expected. Knight b to d7. So I'm just developing my pieces in a logical manner, like I would in any Queen Gambit declined game. He castles, I play c6 now, enforcing my center pawn, and this, okay, so this c6 move is the first move which doesn't blindly follow Queen Gambit decline setup, but rather responds to the position. So you can see that this bishop can be very annoying, so I want to just put an obstacle to this bishop. This is one reason. Another reason is that this pawn could very soon become a target, so I want to enforce it, and all around it's a solid, strong setup. So I don't need to worry that I'm doing some great mistake by playing c6. He played d3. Now I'm just continuing with my, let's say, natural development. So rook to e8, centralizing the rook. He develops knight b d2, and now I'm playing queen to c7. So I'm also developing my queen. And well, you can notice that this bishop on c8 is undeveloped, and this is usually the thing when you play against when you play a d5 as black. You will most likely, your pawns will be on the light squares, and you'll have troubles developing this bishop, and this is well-known story. So I'm not concerned about this. This bishop will be developed later in the game. So now I just put my queen here on a logical square. This queen also guards this b7 pawn, which is sometimes useful if this bishop ever gets dangerous and so on. I think it's just a logical developing move, nothing much to say about this. C takes d4, and now he decides to get the party started. So now the clash begins. So until now we just developed our pieces, and now he played c takes d5, and I have to decide in which way to take the back. C takes d5 is out of the question for me, although the engine doesn't object to it much, because then I'm giving him a C file with a tempo, and I don't like the look of it, so this is out of the question. The other option is to take with my e pawn, so e takes d5, and this is the best option according to the engine and to the book and to the theory and to everything, which I check later, because this gives me control over the semi-open file once this bishop moves somewhere. Okay, but instead I took with the knight. Why did I do this? It was wrong way of thinking. I was thinking that this pawn will become backward pawn. I was thinking if he plays e4, which he did play, then this pawn is a backward pawn, and this is a weakness, and I can exploit this. But this was wrong, and I did the same mistake in my rapid game, I think the day before yesterday. So the concept of a backward pawn makes sense if the pawn cannot progress. But here, after he plays c4, he has d4 covered with two pieces, and I don't have it covered with nothing. So this is not a backward pawn, because it can be moved forward. So the backward pawn is a weakness, and it's a permanent weakness in the position which you can attack and so on, only if you can stop its advancement. I know it's logical, it's like I'm discovering, rediscovering the wheel here, but well, sometimes these very simple concepts just just escape your attention. I don't know how to explain this. I mean, it's the most logical thing in chess. I mean, the pawn is not weakness if it can it can be moved forward. But okay, somehow I didn't think about this, and I repeated the same mistake again. So maybe 10 days after playing this game, I was playing rapid, and I did exactly the same thing. So I was playing for with the idea that he will have the backward pawn, which I can attack, and then I forgot that he can just move forward to this backward pawn. So okay, one thing to remember. So e4, and I was like, yeah, backward pawn, but not really. So knight to b4. Now I have to run away with my knight, and you'll see that this knight will not have some prospects here, and I was thinking about where to move my knight. Do I move it back? Do I move it here? And the idea behind the knight to b4 was that I can play c5, which is always, it's called a liberating move in this kind of when you are black, when you can play c5, it's almost always a good thing. So I was thinking about playing c5 and then putting my knight back on c6, and now I will control d4 at least for a bit. And well, knight on c6 will be nice, especially given my pawn on c5. And then if I manage to get this setup, then maybe I can even be able to call this pawn backward pawn, because now it will be this d4 will be controlled twice by me. So this was the idea, and it was the correct idea. I checked with engine later, and engine likes this idea, so it was the correct idea. But you'll see I backed up on this idea, because now I wrongly calculated then that he cannot play a3 here. So okay, I'm attacking the queen, of course, he has to move the queen, and now I have to, now it was time to play c5 and then to bring my knight on c6. But I wrongly calculated that I should not be in the hurry to do this, because he cannot play a3, because this was my calculation. If he plays, okay, I play something. If he plays a3, then I can jump here to c2, attacking his rook, and then after he moves the rook, I can just grab the pawn, because I'm attacking this pawn twice, and it is defended only once. But I completely miscalculated that he can just play rook to a2, and now this pawn is protected twice. I cannot take it, and this knight is trapped. So I didn't see this in my calculation. So here I did play b6, thinking that if he plays this, I will play this, and so on. And he did play a3, and now I saw it. So after he moved the pawn, I saw, oh, the a2 square is now empty for his rook. So I cannot play this move. So I needed to move my knight back to a6. Okay. And now he plays d4, of course. Logical move, and this pawn is no longer backward, and he has, in fact, very nice center. And now you see my real troubles begin. I have less space. All my pieces are crumbled, undeveloped. This bishop is undeveloped. This knight is terrible on the rim. This guy is here. Rooks are not connected. So now my suffering begins. Now I have a really unpleasant position to play. And my goal here is to survive somehow, to survive this position and the coming attacks and expansion from his side. And in the long term, my goal is to exchange pieces. So every time when you are you have less space, you want to exchange pieces. So that and when you have less space, you want to have less pieces. Then it doesn't matter if you have less space, because if you have less pieces, then they can be maneuvered. But if you have all the pieces on the board and less space, it's a nightmare to play, because the pieces stumble one upon another and you can do nothing. So my troubles now begin. So I play the knight a to b8. I have to do something about this knight. It cannot stand here, and also you see that now I have a kind of backward pawn, and I have a weakness here on c6. It's not a backward pawn, because in theory it can be pushed at some point, but it's a weakness. Knight f to c1. Now he's just piling up on my weakness. Bishop to a6. Okay, I'm trying to develop this bishop. You can also see that here there was a threat to make this pin, also not really a threat, because he can block it with the knight, but nevertheless. Okay, rook f to c1, bishop a6. He moves his queen e3, knight to f6. So I'm trying to do something logical with my pieces. Now at least he cannot play e5, because he'll just give me very nice center square for my knight. Queen to c3. Now he's piling to my pawn, but also he's threatening this g7. And if you remember, I think it was one or two games ago where I blundered this mate. So this is the constant distant threat. He can move the pawn, and then my knight cannot be moved, because you threaten checkmate and so on. So I decided to stop this threat altogether by just playing bishop to f8. And now I'm protecting this from the checkmate, and also I'm activating this rook. So it's not such a bad move, and well, my bishop is still on this diagonal. So it was some kind of safety move, which had some other good side effects. My opponent played the knight to e5. Now he's completely strangling me. He's going forward his pieces, and he's still piling on this pawn. Now this pawn is attacked 3 times. Here I played bishop b7, just protecting this pawn. Now this pawn is protected 3 times, attacked 3 times. And now let me just hold on this position just for a moment. So you can see that I'm completely in trouble. So my rooks are not connected. This knight is terrible. This bishop is terrible. This bishop not so good. So I have less space. So what do I need to liberate myself? I need moves. I need tempos. Because if I don't, I just need several moves to remaneuver my pieces and maybe to force some exchange, and I will be okay. And his goal should be not to give me these moves, not to give me time to breathe, not to give me time to remaneuver my pieces and to overprotect this c6 pawn, for example, and so on. So this is the game of time here. He has to make constant pressure. He has to keep his initiative, and I'm just drowning on the other side. And this is what he failed to do. And in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but I think his next move was the greatest positional mistake he made in this game. So he played h3, thus giving me time, giving me a move. And this is crucial in these kind of positions. So first of all, I'm not sure about this h3 move because this suggests that he now wants to play on the king side. From the positional perspective, why would you want to play on the king side when all your pieces are on the queen side? So all his pieces are looking at the queen side. Okay, so he should be playing on the queen side. This is my logic. So this is the first I think positional misconception from my opponent. Why play on the king side when you can play on the queen side? So this is the first thing. And the second thing is, well, you are just giving me a free move. So you're playing some move on the other side of the board, while the fire is going here. So now I have extra move. And thank you very much. I played immediately rook to c8, and now I'm overprotecting this pawn. This pawn now is protected 4 times, and I can now release my knight. And this is what I needed, and he shouldn't have allowed me to do this. What is the best move here? Well, the engine has some suggestions. I would think about either pushing these pawns forward because you want to play on the queen side, or just to triple the heavy pieces and just to continue with the pressure. And you can even push this pawn and now bring this bishop to the attack of c6 and so on. So for example, something like here, like this. Okay. So in my opinion, this was something he should have been thinking about, but not h3. So h3, rook c8, or protecting the pawn. He now played f4, so he continues to play on the king side, while everything is going on the queen side. And this gives me another move. So knight b d7. And now I'm starting to liberate my position. Offering the exchange, he accepts the exchange, which I think he maybe wasn't the best thing to do. I think maybe knight to d3, maybe remaneuvering the knight, or maybe even to f2 to f3. So something like this. I don't think he should consent to exchanging pieces when he's when he has so much space. But he did. So knight takes d7, queen takes d7, and suddenly I'm okay here. So the position according to Angel is equal now. From the human perspective, it's more difficult to play as black. So from the human perspective, I would not say it's equal because it's more difficult to play as black, but it's pretty close to equal even from the human perspective. Now I'm not, well, my rooks are coordinated, my pieces are okay, I can hope for c5 in the future, my bishop will be activated, my knight is okay, this bishop makes sense. So I don't have any major issues here. And now let's just play 2 more moves. Knight to c4, okay, he's moving his piece forward, c5. Okay, and now I have no problems whatsoever. Everything goes in my favor. I mean, compared to what I have before. And this is a very important psychological moment in the game, because let's just go a few moves back. I mean, before h3. Okay, look at this position. He's completely dominating. So I should almost resign here. He has everything. He has 2 central pawns. He has space advantage. He's controlling the only semi-open file in the game. His knight is in my half of the board, and I don't see how I can easily kick it away. He has the other knight which can come handy. He has everything here, and now in his psychological state, I can only guess, I don't know the man, but usually the psychological state is, okay, I'm winning, I have achieved everything I was hoping for. So when you play Reti opening, this is what you are hoping for to achieve. So he achieved all his goals. He has space advantage, he has active pieces, he has control of semi-open files, he has active bishop pair, he has everything. And in this psychological state, he's winning. And now, just a few moves later, okay, what's going on? Now suddenly he doesn't have the winning position anymore, and he has to fight again. So he has to now psychologically he has to make this switch. He has to say to himself, okay, I was winning, but now I'm not winning anymore. The position is equal. I have to fight all over again. And there is no use crying over the spilled milk. I did have a better position, I wasted it. Okay, the game goes on. We are back on square one. So this is the psychological process which has to occur in this kind of situation. But it's very difficult for human. It's very difficult to make this psychological switch, and the result is usually some kind of blunder or some kind of attack which is unfounded. So people usually in this kind of situation, I'm talking for myself, I'm doing this also. So you have winning position, suddenly you don't have winning position, and you still want to prove that you are winning, and then you go to some kind of crazy attack, or you just get so distracted by all these psychological swifts that you blunder something. And in this case, my opponent blundered. Just two moves after. So he played the knight to e5, okay, centralizing the knight, attacking the queen. I moved my queen away, and he played king to h2, and now blundering this pawn. You can see that this pawn is attacked twice and defended only once. So like I said, this is the psychological moment. So when you go from this position to this position, now you're likely to do something incorrect. So he blundered the pawn. Okay, now I'm a pawn up, and I want to go to the end game, and I want to win the end game. There is also one principle when I just was listening to John Bartholomew talking about this a few days ago. He says that when you're a pawn up, but there are many pawns on the board, then you favor exchanges, and you favor, even if you can have only king and pawn endgame, it's king and pawns endgame, it will favor you, because if you have many pawns on the board, then you can just push them on the different sides of the board, and the king cannot catch them all. But if you have only, for example, if you have 3 pawns and your opponent has 2 pawns, then you have to think very carefully, do you want to go to the end game with the kings, because most of these positions can be very easily drawn. So I'm now pawn up, and we have many pawns on the board. So I kind of favor exchanges, not for any price, but I am for exchanges here. So I took the pawn, he exchanged. I don't think he should be doing this. I'm not sure. Maybe this position, this bishop is very powerful, so maybe in this position it's justified. But generally he shouldn't be. He should try to exchange pawns. So his strategy should be here not to exchange pieces, but to exchange pawns. So the less pawns are on the board, the more his drawing chances are. So he's exchanged the bishop. I took with the knight. He's attacking the knight. I moved the knight back. Okay, and now he took the pawn. Okay, and now I saw that we can exchange everything on this c5 square. So I decided to make an in-between move, because my calculation was that if we now exchange everything on c5 square, it will be his turn to move, and my knight will be rather passive on f6. But if I play knight d5, attacking the queen, so this is a free move, he has to move his queen away. Now I can exchange everything, and after we exchange everything, I will end up with my knight being on d5. So this is just a free move. So you have to be careful with in-between moves, because especially if you are not very confident in your calculation skills, it can very often go wrong. But here it's very simple. So I just want, after all the exchanges, I just want to have my knight ended up on d5. So this is a useful little move. I now took the pawn, he took the rook, we exchanged rooks, and now I was hoping that he will just exchange queens, but he didn't. He played bishop to d4, okay, queen to c4, b4. I will not comment on every move because it's a long game. So rook to c8, now suddenly I'm in control of the c file, and also I'm now threatening to forcefully exchange queens and activate my rook. So he stops this idea. f6, I'm kicking his central knight away. Knight to g4, queen to c4. Just useful move, centralizing the queen, making some attacks. Now you can see that this queen is overburdened. It has to protect two pieces. So I'm just playing for activity, for some kind of advantage. Rook to d2, protecting everything. f5 here. And now this does leave me with a backward pawn, and I'm well aware of this, but I don't think he can exploit this. For example, in the just few moves ago, I just ran quickly. Okay, here when he attacked my knight, here f5 was an option, but now this would be a backward pawn, and he has 3 heavy pieces, and all these pieces can pile up on this backward pawn. And he has many other pieces on the board, so I cannot, for example, go with my king here because his knight is covering f7. So this would be very unwise to play f5 here because of this weakness. But now, a few moves later, well, now I don't. Okay, now I don't see much problem in playing f5 because I can deal with this weakness. And here he played knight to e3, hitting my queen. He could have come back to the e5, and I'm not really sure did I even see this move in the game. I mean, it doesn't achieve much here anymore. I can just continue, but I'm not sure I did see this move. And you can see the time, so I'm 3 minutes, he's 5 minutes, so I think the game was nearly 2 hours here long. So I started to get a little bit tired, so maybe I missed some things, but okay. And nevertheless, he played knight to e3. I exchanged the pieces, so knight takes e3, queen takes e3, bishop to e7. Now I'm just want to activate my bishop to bring it to the game. Rook to e2. Now he's trying to pile up on my backward pawn, but I'm not worried because he has dark square bishop, so he cannot attack it with his piece. So I just played king to f7, covering the pawn. Bishop to e5, and now bishop to f6, wanting to exchange the bishops. And now he played queen to f3, and this is the move I didn't predict, and I was a little bit afraid of this move because he now has a penetration square, a b7, hitting the pawn and giving me the check, so I have to think about how to stop this. And also he has this check. So he has two ways of penetrating my position here. And the best move here actually was just to take the bishop. He has to take back bishop, and then I can just escape with my king, not to get checked. So here it will not be check, and something like this should work. Okay, but I panicked a little bit here, and I played queen to c6 here, so I wanted to stop his penetrating, and I'm also offering the exchange of queens, and I'm stopping his from penetrating here. And now he plays queen to h5 check, and now he's hitting my h7 pawn and giving me check. So I cannot just block the check because he will grab my h7 pawn. So the only move is queen to g8, guarding the pawn. And now he exchanged bishops, but on his terms. And now I have double pawns. And now my advantage is very slight. I am a pawn up, but I have double pawns, which can be stopped by one pawn. So these are effectively like having one pawn. So now this is with precise game, this should be a draw. And now the game continued, queen to h6, attacking the pawn, defending the pawn, queen h4, rook f7, g4. Now I cannot take the pawn because he will give check and attack e6 pawn at the same time. So I play queen to c3, hitting his other pawns. G takes f5, e takes f5. Now you can see that I have these double pawns, which now my pawn advantage is almost non-existent because everything is stopped here. And you can see that I have also very little time, and this is, like I said, this looks like a draw more and more. And in fact, he tried to force the draw by threefold repetition. So he played rook e8 check. I blocked the check, and he played rook e7. Now he's threatening checkmate here. So I have to block the checkmate, and he went again. I went again. He went again. So if I was to play rook to f7, it would be a draw by repetition, but I didn't want to draw because, well, I am technically pawn up, so I thought that I might have some winning chances. So I decided to just give some checks to reposition my queen on some better square, and also to get some time, because you can see here I have 37 seconds, and this is a 30-second increment game. So I had only 7 seconds on the clock on at one point. So you can see that this was very very demanding. I was in great time trouble. So when you have in the long game, when you have 7 seconds on your clock, it's not the most pleasant thing to play with. And I could have taken the draw here, but I didn't want to, so I needed to get some time. So this is why I gave some checks. Okay, now I got at least some time, because you can play these checks rather quickly. And now my queen is now ready to join the defense. So this was my other goal with these checks. Okay, and now I played. You can notice that this checkmate constant checkmate. You can notice that this checkmate threat is a constant here. So it's okay while I'm doing checks, but at one point I have to stop making checks, and then I have to deal with this mating threat. So I played rook to f7. He went for this check, and now I played king to g7. So I didn't want to make this draw, so instead I just played my king, and now he has no checks. Now he decides to exchange queens. I guess he thought that his drawing chances are better if the queens are off the board, which might be true. It depends on the character of the player. So we exchange queens, and now rook d7, rook e3. So we are now now we are in the end game. We have two rooks, we have pawns, and we want to activate our kings, and we want to activate our rooks, and at the same time stop our opponent to activate his rooks. So after the exchange of queens, well, I played rook to d7, wanted to, for example, give a check to penetrate, and he of course stopped me by playing rook e3. Now I tried to go with my king to the center, so king f8, king f3. So I'm trying to now to move my king up. I see that it doesn't work, so I go back. Then I try the other way around. He now attacks my pawn here. Okay, now this is also the crucial moment. Now he decides to attack my pawn, but at the same time he allows me to penetrate with check. And this is a losing move. Actually, this is a losing move from white, because he allows me the check, and then he allows me to do some very nasty things on his in his camp. So I delivered a check, and he played knight to h, and he played king to h2, and now I had a win. This is the first missed win. So the win was just to play king to h4, let him grab the pawn and win the h pawn. But now I have passed pawn. So he can go something like king g2, for example, and I can just play king g4. And now I'm hitting this pawn. This one is protecting. I can just push this pawn, and it's a win. It will be a win here. Okay, but I missed this win. So in this position, I didn't see that he cannot defend this pawn if I attack it. so I missed that win. Instead, I defended my f6 pawn. He played, but also by, okay, I defended my f6 pawn, but I saw that he cannot defend these two pawns, so I will at least cash in one pawn. It would be much better to cash in on this pawn, because my king is here and I can very easily promote this pawn, but okay, I missed this. He played a4, I just went behind the pawn, a5, and now I'm winning a pawn. Okay, now I have a passed pawn here, and this, I think this is winning. h4, and now he played h4, and I had another chance, and this chance was to go to h5, and again you use the same idea to win this pawn, because now if he would defend it, I can just give a check, he has to move, and I can take the pawn. And then again I have this passed pawn, I have this king which can support it, I have the rook, and this is a win. So this is second missed win. So you will see many missed wins here. Well, it happens when the game lasts. I think here it was over 2 hours long. And like I said, when I will talk about fatigue and tiredness, it's much more difficult to play these 30+30 time controls than 90+30 in the over-the-board tournament, because in the 90+30 you have time to rest, to take a break. So if I was playing this on the real over-the-board tournament and I start to feeling dizzy and tired, I would just go outside, I would go to bathroom, I would splash some cold water to my face, I would maybe get a Coke or a cup of coffee, or have some chocolate, and then I would come back and continue play. So you can take 5 or 10 minutes break usually in the long time controls, over the board time controls. And here you cannot. You have to be all the time. You need to be concentrated. You need to sit over the board, and you just cannot waste any time, because you don't have so much of it. And this is what makes one very tired. So h5. Like I said, I missed this win, so I played h5 instead. Rook c8. Now he wants to bring his rook behind the passed pawn, which is the correct thing to do. If I could somehow put my rook behind the passed pawn, then I would have a clean victory, but I cannot achieve this. Rook to b5, rook a8. So the rook now, his rook is behind my passed pawn. a5, protected. King to g3. And I play king to f7. Now, in this position, he's pretty much locked. This rook has to guard this pawn. Well, his queen doesn't have much other things to do as well, so I have more freedom of remaneuvering my pieces. So king to f7, king to f2, and now I let him have this pawn and instead go to the king side. So rook to b4, he now takes my pawn, and I take the pawn on f4. And now again I have a passed pawn. In fact, I have two passed pawns, although they are doubled. My king is near and my rook is near, and this should be winning position for black. But I managed not to win this anyway. So king to g3, rook to g4, check, king to h3, king to g6. So I'm preparing, everything is ready for pushing the pawn. Rook to a8, f4, just pushing, rook to a5, f3, rook to a3. And now, it was 2 hours and 10 minutes, I think, here. And now the fatigue really took place. What is the main basic principle in the rook and pawn endgame? Rooks should be behind passed pawns. So it's the most basic thing which I know, and I mean it's a mantra which you hear a million times. So what is the best move here? Well, even if this was a bullet game, I think this is the most logical move. So just put your rook behind the passed pawn, and this is a win, and it's basically game over. For some reason, I didn't do this. It's kind of a mystery, but okay. I guess just my brain was a mishmash. So after more than 2 hours, I didn't get up. I was completely focused on the game, on the board. I play this, by the way, on the real board with my pieces, and then I transfer the moves on the computer. So I was over the board, sitting more than 2 hours, completely focused, concentrating, and I guess my brain just said, "Okay, it's enough." So instead of playing the most obvious winning move here, I played f2, and now it's a draw. Because he knows that he also knows that rook belongs behind the pass pawns, either yours or your opponent's. So he just put his rook behind my pass pawn, and I cannot protect this pawn, and I lose this pawn, and I go to completely drawish endgame. Not drawish, but technical draw. So I play f5. I have to give up this pawn. f4, rook f3, and now we just I just try to somehow push this pawn. It's very difficult. So we just go on. I will not comment on this. There's just one moment I want to comment. Okay. Now he's forcing the exchange. I cannot. He's now attacking my pawn twice. I cannot defend it. Otherwise, he would just give me. If I wanted to defend this pawn with my king, he would just perpetually check me. So I didn't have much choice here. Okay, now I cannot take the rook because it will be a draw. I mean, it's a draw anyway, but still, maybe I can hope for a mistake here. So I give check. Okay. And this is the position. Now I have the one last winning chance, which I missed. So it's what is this, like fourth winning chance. So there is a very common pattern when kings are opposed and the king is defending the rook. Then this, by delivering check, this king has to move away and abandon his defensive post. So here it doesn't work because he can just block. But if I play h4, this is the winning move, he cannot take. If he takes with the rook, I give check, he has to move, I grab the rook. Okay, so after h4, he cannot take. So he has to move somewhere. So let's say that he moves on f3, then I can just check. He now cannot defend this rook anymore, he can attack my rook. I take, he takes, and this is game over. So this was last missed win, h4, and I should have seen this because I know this pattern. So this pattern is familiar to me. So when the kings are opposed and king is guarding the rook, you can just win the rook very easily. So I should have seen that h4 is winning here, but I didn't. So I played rook to d3, check, he blocked, I exchanged, and now it's just a draw. Okay. This was the game. So much missed wins in the end game. The game did last long. I was not little, but I was very very tired in the end, and my brain just started to suggest some weird things, and decided not to see some very obvious things in the board. So I think I can learn many things from the middle game in this game, but also in the end game, in the sense that in this kind of time controls, you just need to have your end games. You need to know your endgame patterns, and you just have to be able to play your endgames more from the memory than from the calculation. Unfortunately, this is the way it is. You can see this. I recently ordered this book, Arkel Sendings, and it's a very good book. I recommend it. It's from the Grandmaster Kit Arkel. His endgame expert. And in his first game, it was played in 1991, and he said that the game lasted for 11 hours. So the rules was you have 2.5 hours for first 40 moves, and then every 20 moves you get 1 hour on the clock. There are no increment at this time. So after 20 moves you get 1 hour. So you play 20 moves, you get 1 hour, and it can go on and on. So he played the end game 11 hours. The game was 11 hours, and game was more than half than it. So he had time to think in the end game. But in this kind of tight time controls, even in the federated over the board tournament, when you have 90 minutes plus 30 seconds per move, it's still too little time to really be able to think in the end game. First of all, you are tired in the end game, and second of all, you don't have much time. And if you watch my time here, you can see several times I was under 1 minute, so I played under pressure, and I was tired. I didn't have time to take a break. So this is what happens. It's not an excuse. You have to know your basic games. I mean, rook belong behind pass pawns. It's really something you should know. Even if you have 1 second on the clock, you should play this move. But for some reason I didn't. So okay, it's a draw against stronger opponent. It was an instructing game. I cannot be unsatisfied with the game. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry if this video took a little bit more time. I guess it did. How long? Oh. Okay, it was a long video, but it was a long game, and I think it will be worth it if you did watch to the end, because there are some valuable lessons here. Thanks again for watching, and see you very soon. Cheers.